So hello, my name is Harine Vidyasekaran and I'm from Amrita Vidyapeetham. I'm here and I'm your host to talk about IAM by AWS. So let's look at a basic introduction of what IAM is, what kind of service it is, and how exactly it's helpful. First and foremost, what is IAM? So let me expand the abbreviation for you. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It's one of the main and important services provided by AWS. And as said from the AWS documentation, Identity and Access Management is a web service that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. So it's pretty simple. It's said right there. It's a web service and it helps you securely control access to AWS resources. What are AWS resources? They are things like EC2 and S3. And as a company, when you want to access those resources, you need some sort of manager that is providing the access, revoking the access, and taking care of all of that, right? So that is IAM for you. So where IAM is used, right? So the scenarios where IAM could be used are multiple. First and foremost, I'd like to open AWS Academy, which is a great platform to learn about AWS services and even do practical labs like these where you can actually use the particular service. So this is Module 8 Challenge Lab, controlling AWS account access by using AWM. If you go down here, so over here, suppose you own a cafe, right? This is a great example of a scenario where IAM can be used. Suppose you own a cafe and you have an online website where people can go and put in orders to order the items in your cafe. So that website is going to generate a lot of traffic. It's going to have billing. It's going to have a menu. It's going to have everything that an app would have. So this app could be deployed onto the cloud, and for that you would have a big team of people working, right? If you have, for say, a DevOps team, would they require to edit the code? No. So you give those people particular permissions, and you give the people who write the code particular permissions. Next, let's talk about some key concepts within IAM, right? Before this is kind of required before you go into the demo, so you're able to understand better. So now that I talked about teams of people working together, you can imagine an office where there are front-end developers, back-end developers, and all of them, right? So that's exactly what a user group is. Let me explain this first. So a user group is a group of people that are working towards a similar goal, that are doing similar things, doing similar operations. For example, front-end developers can be a user group. They are people who develop their UI and also do the front-end operations. And then you have users. Obviously, users, a group of users are generalized to user group. And users are people like one front-end engineer, and part of that could be a person who develops the UI. And there are so many people, right? Each person will have an individual account and individual credentials. As written here, it refers to one singular person or a user and represents a singular account with its own credentials. And so, when you have the instance where you want to assign certain permissions to all the front-end developers and all the back-end developers, there might be around 50 people. So you cannot go to each person's account and give them the 20 or 30 permissions that you want to give them as a manager. So you would put them into user groups and you would assign those permissions to those particular user groups. So I had to switch windows really quick. So now that we're done with that, let's look at the demo. So from AWS Academy, we have clicked on AWS and we have gotten the AWS page. And then when you look over here, user groups. So you can create a user group by just giving create group. And once you click on that and let it load, you can give the user group name. So suppose I want to register a group of database administrators. So I would give the name of that as DB administrators. So let me just do that, DB. So I could give DB administrators, and after that, I can go over here and I can attach the permissions that I want to give to the DB administrators. So I would like for the DB administrators to have access to EC2. So as you can see over here, I would like to give EC2 container full registry access, or suppose I would like to give EC2 read-only access. I think that is appropriate. So once I check that, and if you go back to user groups, yeah, there can be some errors at times. It's just a lab. But again, you can see that the permissions are defined. Now you can add a user to this user group. For that, we can go to users and we can go with create user. So suppose the user is Harine. Then we need to provide the user some access, right? We could go with the custom password. And then we could go ahead and create the user. So in this way, okay, we need some special characters, and you can create the user. And that's how you create the user, and you check on add user to group, and you can go with DB administrators because I want that person to be part of this DB administrator group, and then I can press next. Just I have to review all of the permissions. So as I can see, I had to give the right name and password for this particular lab. The name and the password was different. So when we do that, the user will be created successfully. So with this proper credentials as provided here, once you are able to create that, you could go back to IAM. And then best practices, yes. So the most important best practice is the least privilege principle. The least privilege principle goes by the fact that you want to provide the minimum amount of permissions to a particular user. You don't want to think about the fact that what if they require these permissions so that they don't have to keep asking or they don't have to run into any roadblocks. I could just provide a few extra permissions or provide well more than what they need. Wouldn't that be easier? That's exactly opposite of this particular rule. The least principle goes with the fact that you want to provide the minimum permissions necessary for users, groups, or roles. So that's pretty much it. I hope you got a basic understanding of what identity and access management is. IAM is a very important service provided by AWS. It has everything to do with providing access, revoking access, simulating the permissions that a user has, creating user groups, and all of that. It's kind of a software simulation of an office, right? So that's about it. Thank you so much and have a good day.